Today, you will learn from somebody with insider knowledge the truth behind the reports that federal police officers are kidnapping protesters off the streets. So let's jump right into this. Okay, so today's video is mostly due to this viral video that's been all over the internet showing the federal police arresting a protester or a rioter in Portland, and then also due to the amount of people that are putting misinformation out about what's actually going on. Now really fast, this video is nothing against any other YouTuber that has put videos out about this subject. I have the unfair advantage that since I work in law enforcement, I kind of know how this stuff operates. So the most common complaint that I hear people say about this is that, number one, that the federal police are going around in unmarked vehicles so people can't tell who they are. Number two, that the federal police are in plain unmarked uniforms so people again don't know who they are, and next that they are randomly snatching protesters off the street and then not telling anybody who they are and what they are arresting the protesters for, and then also that nobody knows where these protesters are going to, if they're going to secret jails or not. And people are also saying that they are afraid that the Constitution is being trampled on and that martial law is being basically enacted. Now many of you that watch my channel know that I have been a police officer for approximately 19 years now, so I'm going to be able to shed some real eye-opening insight to you in this video. However, even though I have been a police officer for a very long time now, many of you that watch my channel know that I am no fan of big government. So if police, whether they're local police or federal, if they are actually kidnapping protesters off the street and taking them to secret jails, then you know that I will have a huge problem with that. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to give you true and accurate information so that you can make up your own informed decision if the police are actually making secret arrests and putting people in secret jails or not. And I also think that we need to get this out of the way really fast. It does not appear that the federal police are actually targeting protesters. To me, it appears that they are targeting rioters. And there is a big difference between somebody that is exercising their First Amendment right to protest and the socialists and communists that are dressed in black causing a lot of destruction in their riots. And then if you really want to see what's going on, you should visit Andy, and I think his last name is No, but you should visit Andy No's Twitter page, because he unmasks these Antifa members and he really shows what's going on, which is quite different than what usually gets whitewashed by the mainstream media. And I will put a link to his Twitter page down below that you can visit even on a desktop computer. So let's go ahead and take a look at the first complaint, which is that the federal police are going around in unmarked vehicles when they go around to arrest these rioters. The first thing that you have to think about is that when you are operating in a hot zone, basically a war zone where all these violent riots are happening at, like Portland, if you are law enforcement and if you are going around in a marked vehicle to arrest these rioters, in that marked vehicle you are really making yourself a target for Molotov cocktails or gunshots or whatever else. So when you are going around trying to round up targeted looters or rioters, you are wanting to go in an unmarked vehicle so you can actually reach that person. Heck, if I had the job of trying to locate and pick up a targeted rioter, I would want to be in an unmarked vehicle too, in a war zone like that. So now let's take a look at the next complaint, which is that the federal police were going around in unidentifiable uniforms or unmarked uniforms so that people did not know who they were when they made arrests. But I noticed that when I watched a lot of these videos that the police had panels on their uniforms very big that said police, and while it's hard to see in the not so great cell phone videos that usually taken at night, in a lot of these uniforms I am seeing the shoulder patches that would identify who those police officers are and who they work for, or what federal agency that they work for. Now, when police officers are dressed in uniforms like this, in BDUs like this, their patches will generally be called what's called subdued patches, which means they're not as bright and colorful like police patches, shoulder patches normally are. So when these patches are subdued, unless you are up close and part of that activity, you're probably going to have a hard time reading what it says. In fact, even if it was a normal colorful patch, unless you're really close, it's hard to read what it says. But what those subdued patches do, what they accomplish is they help to make that officer less of a target. They're not as easily seen to draw attention to that officer to make a target out of him in a war zone like that. And you may even disagree with the police being dressed like that in their BDUs, and you might call it militaristic looking. But the reality is they are in a war zone. That is a night after night battle between them and the rioters and the Antifa and the communists that are trying to cause the downfall of the United States. Okay, now let's take a look at the next complaint, which is that the federal police are randomly snatching up protesters without telling anybody what they're being arrested for or where they're going. The first thing that we have to remember is that police generally just don't randomly snatch people up. When they arrest somebody, they have to have probable cause to make that arrest because the police have to take them to actual jail. And then that person is going to face a judge who's going to review the probable cause for that arrest. So the police have to have probable cause to actually arrest that person to begin with, or at least articulable reasons to detain that person for a short period of time. And then when these violent and destructive riots are occurring, a common tactic that the police will use is they will try to identify the most aggressive of the rioters, the ones that are causing the most injuries or the most destruction. So then they will target that rioter. And what you're actually watching right now is a sample video of police watching an agitator that is turning a protest into an actual full-on riot. So again, the tactic that the police will many times do is they will identify or they will target a very aggressive rioter, and then they will watch that rioter until that rioter gets away from the main crowd. When that rioter reaches a more safe spot that the police can take him into custody at, an area where that rioter is not going to be surrounded by hundreds of other rioters that will attack the police when the police try to arrest that rioter. And then once that targeted person reaches that more safe place, then the police will swoop in and take him into custody. So that is just a huge thing to remember when you see these videos that does appear that the police are just randomly kidnapping people off the streets. Is you're just seeing that few seconds of video of that actual arrest, of that person actually being taken into custody. You're not seeing what that person is suspected of doing prior to them being arrested. To put it another way, you are seeing one or two sentences of a chapter of a book. You are missing most of the story. So anyways, once the police have seen that their target rioter has left the main group of the riot and they have reached a more safe place for the police to take them into custody, then the police will swoop in and take them into custody. Now, even though they're away from the main part of the riot, there are still other agitators and rioters around. So it's still a hot zone. It's still not a completely safe place. And that is not the time to be hanging around, striking up conversation with people that's around there about why that person's being arrested. It is time to get that person, get them into the transport vehicle, and get them taken to the holding cell or to the jail that they are going to. And now let's take a look at the next complaint, which is people saying that they don't know where these rioters that get arrested, where they're being taken to, and if they're being taken to a secret jail or not. Typically, when federal police officers arrest somebody, they are taken to that local county jail in that area that that person is arrested in, and then they are held at that jail until they are either released or that they see a judge. So when people get arrested in Portland for rioting, all you have to do is go to that county's sheriff's department's website and then you can usually look up the names and see what people were charged with. This is public information that anybody can look up. So the accusation that people are being secretly arrested and going to secret jails and nobody's being told what they're being arrested for is false. Again, I would really highly suggest that you go to Andy No's Twitter page because he has a lot of these bookings, these jail bookings, listed on his page. And here's actually an example of somebody that I personally looked up that was arrested in the Portland riots just a couple days ago. And even though this is public information, I am still going to blank out his name because he has not been actually convicted of anything yet. But you can see here that it shows his name, it also shows his mugshot, and it also shows that the arresting agency is the U.S. Marshal Service. And then if you go even further down into the jail information page for him, you can see that he's already been released, which is typically people get released pending a future court date. And you can see that when he was arrested that he was held on a U.S. Marshal's hold. And now let's just take a look at the next complaint, which is where people are saying that the U.S. Constitution is being trampled on and that martial law is basically being enacted. Folks, I just don't see where the Constitution is being trampled on here. With seeing that the federal police are having uniforms on that do identify them as police officers, and then seeing where these protesters are being arrested and seeing that their arrests are being made public information, and then even seeing where these protesters are being released, probably pending future court trials, I just don't see where secret police are making arrests and taking rioters to secret jails where they will never be seen or heard from again. Now, with having said all of that, I also don't like the attitude of these people are traitors to the country and are trying to destroy the country, so we need to do everything that's possible to take care of them, because we have to remember right now President Trump is targeting Antifa and violent rioters. But we always have to remember that down the road we may have a president that could target patriots. So while I do think that the federal police are remaining in line of the constraints of the United States Constitution, I do think this is something that we have to pay attention to and monitor and make sure the government doesn't step out of bounds. Us good guys, we keep in bounds of the United States Constitution. And I also think that President Trump is playing an optics game with this. The more that the mainstream media gets in an uproar about this, the more that they shove this news story into everybody's faces, then the more people that the more people that's thinking about, that's considering if they're going to join a riot or not, when they see news stories of rioters being swooped up by unidentified cops on the street, it's going to make them think twice if they're going to join that riot or not. So why don't you do me a favor and comment below, after seeing this video and hearing this information, do you think that the feds are acting outside of the Constitution and that they are using secret cops to take rioters to secret jails? Or do you think that the feds are operating within the constraints of the United States Constitution? And to learn what you can do if you find yourself in your car being surrounded by violent rioters that are trying to harm you, then click on the video that should be appearing on the screen just about now, so that you can learn how you can better protect yourself if you find yourself in that situation. Anyways, folks, if you made it this far, hey, thank you very much for watching, and I pray that you have a good night.